JJ Redick is grown to become one of the more respected analysts for basketball on TV. After playing 15 seasons, Redick has been able to accomplish being fair to players in today's game while still being able to call them out. And this week, JJ would go on to First Take and have a field day on Doc Rivers.
I've seen the trend now. I've seen the trend for years.
What's the trend?
The trend is always making excuses. Doc, we get it. Taking over a team in the middle of the season is hard. It's hard. We get it. Just like getting traded in the middle of the season is hard for a player. We get it. But it's always an excuse. It's always throwing your team under the bus. They lose to Memphis. Oh, it's just players. Memphis was playing G League guys and two-way guys. And then you look at his quotes over the weekend. Now he wants to take credit for the James Harden trade to the Clippers working out. He wants credit for that. There's never accountability with that guy. There's never accountability.
This quote JJ was alluding to was this.
The job when you're about to go on the toughest road trip of the season is not the smartest decision. I even told them that. Can we wait till All-Star break? You know, it would have been a lot nicer. It's been difficult. It's been probably more difficult than I thought.
This outburst by JJ Redick was surprising, but this is something JJ has said about Doc for some time. Redick played for Doc Rivers on the Clippers, and during that time, the Clippers had very good teams. Like if you remember, these were the best teams in the NBA, but they consistently choked. Just to remind you, they had people like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and Jamal Crawford. All of these guys during their prime. But they could never win a championship, and oftentimes losing in the first round of the playoffs. And then Doc would make this comment when asked about coaching those Clippers teams.
You've had star groups before, and you've had star groups where you've gone on to win it all, and you've had star groups where you've fallen short, right? I'm looking at Boston, I'm looking at Los Angeles. What group does this one that you have right now, does it feel more similarly to one or another?
That's a great question. I would say definitely more leaning towards Boston than the Clippers, and not trying to take anything away from that team. That team was never going to win. When you look back at it, we just didn't get along well enough as a group, and you can't win without cooperation. That's the only way you can win, and obviously better play.
JJ Redick and Jamal Crawford would discuss the comments made by Doc.
I thought it was weird. I'll just say that.
I thought it was weird. Not to cut. I thought it was weird, but to me, the first thing that came to my mind was the one word was accountability. Like it made it seem like we're over here and he was over here. Like, yo, I thought this was all together. So accountability was like, yo, we weren't. That's it. Like that's the part that messed me up.
Yeah, that kind of messed me up too, because I feel like I know I have, and when we have talked about this publicly, whether it's been on a podcast or whatever, everybody I've talked to about it has kind of owned their own mistakes, yes. if that makes sense, and realizes, especially later on, like that we still could have had something special, and then to not get any of that like accountability from him.
So there was some history behind JJ Redick's comments, as he felt this way for some time. The Milwaukee Bucks have had a record of 30-13 under their former head coach Adrian Griffin. While the team was winning, there were people outside and in the organization that didn't believe the team was playing good enough, especially on defense, in terms of winning a championship. And things would only get worse for Griffin when Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo seemed to tune out the coach, as we see Giannis to the side alone during timeouts at times, and would be on the bench drawing up plays for his teammates. The Bucks would fire Griffin just 43 games into his tenure as a head coach, and in their pursuit of winning a championship, let's just hire the coach that choked more than any other coach probably in NBA history, Doc Rivers, and honestly underachieved at every single place he was at. And naturally, as you can assume, it has gone just as good as you expected. And JJ Redick was very clear about the hiring right when it happened.
Doc Rivers to the Milwaukee Bucks makes a lot of sense. He makes a lot of sense, for sure, to a certain faction of people. To another faction of people, we can feel a certain way about him as a coach, about him since 2008 and what he's done. He's certainly won a lot of games, a lot of regular season games. I don't think Doc Rivers is the coach that would get this team to a championship. I don't think that. Maybe based on perimeter personnel, all that thing.
As of now, JJ was right to be skeptical of Doc Rivers. Since becoming the coach, the Milwaukee Bucks are 3-7. While the team's defensive rankings have increased, you got to give them that. They have blown a couple of big leagues since Doc took over, into even one of the worst teams teams in the league, being the Memphis Grizzlies. And Doc just keeps shooting himself in the foot because after every game it feels like he has a negative comment about his players or just random stuff that just does not look good coming from a coach who just consistently chokes and has all these problems.
We come back in this on our set, two guys forget what we're running. Then we miss the shot and then nobody gets back. That's how we start out the third quarter. That tells you all you need to know about where our heads. We had some guys here and we had some guys in Cabo.
Doc Rivers' coaching career by most people is not looked in a great light. Doc's career, like I said before, is just riddled with underachievement. To put it in perspective, in NBA history, there has only been 13 teams that have blown a 3-1 lead in the playoffs, and Doc Rivers has done this 3 times. Once in Orlando, his team blew a 3-1 lead to the Detroit Pistons, then twice on the Los Angeles Clippers to the Houston Rockets and the Denver Nuggets. Doc would be asked about these blown leads, and he would deflect the blame, because obviously he would.
But I wish y'all would tell the whole story with me, all right? My Orlando team is the 8th seed. No one gives me credit for getting up against the Pistons who won the title. That was an 8th seed. Don't look at that. I want you to go back and look at that roster. I dare you to go back and look at that roster, and you would say, what a hell of a coaching job. Really, the Clipper team that we lost 3-1. Chris Paul didn't play in the first 2 games and was playing on one leg. And we didn't have home court. And then the last one, to me, is the one we blew. That's the one I said, we blew that. Now, it was in the bubble, and anything can happen in the bubble. There's no home court. Game 7 would have been in L.A., but it just happened. So I would say with me, some of them is I got to do better always. I always take my own responsibility. And then some of it is circumstances happen.
JJ Redick's comments would go so viral because they were so direct, passionate, and something a lot of people agreed on. And personally, I'm a Celtics fan. I know exactly what he's talking about. I never played with Doc Rivers, obviously, but he underachieved even with the big 3. The KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen-led team should have won more championships than just one. But then somehow, some players actually came in defense of Doc Rivers over these comments, one of them being Patrick Beverley. A back and forth between Beverley and Redick would begin on Twitter. Beverley is a current player on the Bucks and played for Doc before, and he responded to JJ's comments on Twitter saying, "This man Doc actually saved your career, started you when no one else wanted to, and you retire, go on TV and say that." JJ would quickly respond to these comments and say, "Pat, my guy, I had a 4-year offer with a player option for the same money to be a starter for different teams. Fuck out of here with save my career." And to nobody's surprise, the aspiring analyst, Doc Rivers' son, Austin Rivers,
simply don't agree with it. For someone who's not accountable, he seems to always be held responsible, considering he's the guy that's always fired when things don't go right. He got fired in the bubble for a 3-1 lead versus the Denver Nuggets, which in half his team didn't want to be there. They had players saying that their mind wasn't there. He had guys leave. That happened. Then he gets fired for losing to a team that was favored over him, which was the Celtics last year. Seems like he's always responsible. It's just as strange coming from JJ. Your best years were with the Clippers. I don't think he saved your career. I appreciate you, Pat. They're 3-7. Dame has missed most of those games. Middleton's missed a lot of those games. They haven't even had their full team yet. We'll see what happens. The pressure is there. They do have to perform. But in terms of accountability, like, what are we doing here? Your best years in the NBA were when you played for him in the Clippers. Let's not forget that. I don't know if there's like frustration there or there's tension there between you. I know a lot of times we had to sit you towards the end of the game due to defensive reasons, but you had your best years as a starter there, especially our whole system was drafted around you because you're a shooter. You're not a guy who could put the ball on the floor. You were a strictly shoot guy. You're not like Klay Thompson or Steph who could put the ball on the floor. You were a guy who could catch and shoot, and you did it at a high level. Hell of a career, by the way. It's just very ironic and kind of weird.
Would come from the woodwork and try to defend his dad's honor by saying this about JJ Redick. And end of the day, you can clearly see why Austin Rivers would defend his father, but it is pretty interesting because if you look at it, Austin Rivers' career was saved by his dad because in the NBA, Austin Rivers was nothing. But following this, social media was very quick to point out that JJ in fact did not have his best years on the Los Angeles Clippers. But with the 76ers, years later, he averaged more points, assists, and rebounds. And during his time in the media so far, JJ Redick is not perfect, but his ideas usually are well thought out and resonate with the general public.